Hello everyone, dear students. I'm Vinay MS. I welcome you to this digital learning platform of Department of Collegiate Education. Today in this video, we are going to discuss the concept Shakespeare an Introduction. This is a concept prescribed for 5th semester BA English optional subject in the paper Shakespeare in Mangalore University. So in this video, we are going to see how Shakespeare stands unique among the greatest writers of English literature. Welcome you all to this session. See, in the beginning, let's go to the introduction part. The background to Shakespeare can be studied through his information about his life. William Shakespeare, the biography says it is 1564 to 1616. You can rightly point out here that he belonged to two great phases of English history, that is the Elizabethan era and the Jacobean era. So it was a time also a memorable one. It was the era of Renaissance. The Renaissance brought new learning in England. It brought the revival of classical learning. It introduced the human interest, patriotism, lot of innovative and new concepts to the people. So many writers who responded to that new wave which was spreading across Europe, and one such writer is absolutely William Shakespeare. He is an immortal writer, a universal soul. Why? Yes, he is an immortal writer, I can say, because a writer who is relevant to any ages. Shakespeare is eternal. We have been studying for centuries, and we are still studying, William Shakespeare, and Shakespeare will continue to be in our study. That is what is greatness. And why he is so? Because he is universal soul. I mean, his ideas, his works of art are universal in appeal. Though they may be centered in England, or the scenes are selected from the European history, or they were set in European or English context, they give an universal message, a universal moral which is applicable to any simple human being. Therefore, he is a universal soul. But researchers on him says that there is no conclusive evidence or exactly how he wrote and what were his works. There is no exact record on this. There are reasons for that also. Probably when we look at the history of the English, there happened one incident in 1613, that was the fire that burned the Globe Theatre. The Globe Theatre was a place where, as you know, Shakespeare produced and brought into stage so many plays, and his records which were kept at the Globe were burned, and therefore the source is not available. This is one of the speculations. Of course, a reckoning on William Shakespeare, but even for that there is no exact evidence or proof. So therefore the uncertainty about the authorship of his plays continues, and there is no exact source which documents when exactly he wrote and all that. Only the speculations and calculations support this. But whatever it may be, William Shakespeare is still an influencing figure in literature. I'm saying it's literature, not just English literature. Literature of the globe, literature of the world borrowed a lot from William Shakespeare. He continued to influence us through throughout the world to various languages also. That's what the greatness of William Shakespeare. He's still influencing. That means he's still there, and he continues to be there. And his works are translated into many languages, and they are read as across the globe and not just as a mere writer, but as the greatest dramatist the world has ever seen. Anyhow, we also see that Shakespeare primarily wrote two types of works, two genre of work. He worked on two genre of work. One is drama, the other one is poetry in the form of sonnets, mainly sonnets. But though his workplace or his center of work focused on these two, he influenced almost all the genre of English literature or the literature of the world. Variety of things. Poems have been produced on him. Short stories are based on him. Variety of literatures, pieces of literature have been produced throughout the history on Shakespeare. This makes, dear students, Shakespeare is relevant today for us, for future generation also. Let's move ahead. So one interesting thing that I brought here is Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Saint S.T. Coleridge says, Shakespeare, no mere child of nature, no automation of genius, no passive vehicle of inspiration, possessed by the Spirit, not possessing it, first studied patiently, meditated deeply, understood minutely, till knowledge become habitual and intuitive, wedding itself into itself to his habitual feelings, and at length gave birth to that stupendous power by which he stands alone with no equal or second in his own class. I observe two important phrases here. The first one I would like to focus is he studied patiently. That was his, working, the preparatory stage. Then he meditated deeply. That means meditation means not meditating like this, but he reflected on his thoughts. Thought deeply, understood minutely. Then he understood. We know it was an age where university wits, Thomas Kidd and others, they were making their they were learned men. They were making their experiments in the play. Even Christopher Marlowe for that matter. So at such a juncture, Shakespeare he understood minutely, but till knowledge become habitual and intuitive. Knowledge becomes habit and intuition, formation of intuition, wedded itself into his habitual feelings and at length gave birth to stupendous power, right? And finally, you see, he stands alone with no equal or second in his own class, no equal. Certainly, when we come to the idea of play, no equal to him and no second in his own class. That is what the way Coleridge focuses on the greatness of Shakespeare. Yes, dear students, reading Shakespeare is a great thing, is a kind of associating ourselves with a greatest document of treasure of knowledge that produced in English literature. Let's move on to next. See, Shakespeare's life, when we go back to that, the date is clear to you, that was 1564 to 1616. He was born in Stratford upon Avon. No clear records of his early life, as I already told you. He became a prominent dramatist by 1592. You see this time also. Almost in his 30s, 40s, he achieved the zenith of his artistic skill, artistic genius, right? It was in 1592 he became almost a prominent dramatist when Christopher Marlowe was already popular then. University wits were already popular, and Shakespeare was a prolific writer during the age of Renaissance and Reformation. Yeah, there are two terms here very clearly. You can note down that Renaissance was a revival of the classical learning that happened in the 15th and 16th century. Started in the 14th century, almost it continues till 16th century as the history documents. And Reformation is a religious movement where you see the Church of England separated from the Pope's authorities, the Roman Catholic Church. So these two incidents in England brought a lot of changes, right, in the very learning or especially in the field of literature and the production of literature. And it was a time of the period of Queen Elizabeth, and it was a time of Jacobean reign in England also. The later part of his works are produced in Jacobean era, whereas the earlier part where he had the patronage of Queen Elizabeth. So likewise you observe that was the historical context where Shakespeare blossomed. He grew up and grew up to a very colossal figure in the history of English literature. And he is well known for plays, poems, and those were mostly written between 1589 to 1613. This was you can see then probably a kind of 24 years of literary journey. That 24 years probably gave a sufficient thing for centuries to read and interpret. Anyhow, we move on to that next part. When we come to his plays, they were performed by a theatre company, a drama troupes in London called Lord Chamberlain's Men, and later they were known as King's Men also. That was the beginning, right? In the beginning, they were performed by a theatre company. Then we see in the Globe Theatre and Blackfriars Theatre, he started implementing his plays. He staged his plays, and that established the Globe Theatre, established him a great reputation which stands even today. So we can just look at the way Globe was there. There is a modern century, today of a kind of image of this era of Globe Theatre is available here. This is just a replica of Globe Theatre of that time. You can see a kind of oval shaped platform. Spectators can watch the play, and this is the stage where actors used to act, and then the backstage part. So likewise, the Globe Theatre, which holds a lot of importance when come to Shakespeare. And we have, of course, similar Blackfriars Theatre also. None of his original manuscripts survive, as I already told you, because of even unknown reasons also, not clearly stated whether it was just by the burning of the Globe Theatre. But anyhow, thanks to the first folio edition, which edition of 36 Shakespeare's plays published in the year 1623 by his own actors. It was 7 years after his death, documents about 36 important plays of William Shakespeare. And still there is no authentic historical background to all that, but still that's one trustworthy or authentic authoritative document on William Shakespeare. And there are other editions also, so many minor editions, unauthentic editions, of course cheaper editions were produced in the later phase. But we trust, or rather literary critics, or even the people who do their experiments or their writings in literature, they go to those first folio editions. And we move on to next part. His plays. In all, Shakespeare is said to have written 43 plays, according to fourth folio. But the first folio, as we saw in the last part, is 36 plays. Some researchers in the 20th century concluded that he has written about 44 plays. It was part of research, and they say it was 44. Likewise, some reckoning and speculations continued on Shakespeare's personal life as well as his artistic creations. Apart from the plays, he also wrote lyrical poems and sonnets. Two important lyrical poems are there that we are going to see later, and sonnets also. The plays are generally his plays are categorized as comedies, tragedies, history plays, and problem plays. There are also observations that some plays as tragic comedies. For example, we have the Tempest. Some people even call that as a tragic comedy, which has got both tragedy but ends with a denouement or a happy ending. Therefore, it is comedy. So anyhow, we see those types of plays and all that in the next part. So you see here, So Shakespeare's well-known comedies. Let's move on to this idea. So his comedies deal with impediments to free will and romantic love, which are overcome in fantastic situations through compromises and realizations. His comedies deal with impediments, obstacles, problems to free will, for our free choice. There are some obstacles. So there maybe people while choosing lovers there choosing one another, they find some obstacle. That is the conflict in the play, and they will overcome that, and a fantastic situation is created for that purpose. And finally, compromises take place, reconciliations take place, realizations take place, and the plays end happily, or what we say denouement takes place. Those plays are The Comedy of Errors, A Midsummer Night's Dream, As You Like It, Twelfth Night, The Merchant of Venice, The Winter's Tale, The Tempest. These are some great comedies of Shakespeare. Say, for example, if you take As You Like It, that you're going to study in this paper later, you see there the conflict is created in the beginning. The impediment is created in the beginning because the love between the Rosalind and Orlando is somewhat disturbed by the decisions of the Duke Ferdinand, right? So there at the end, when they exile to the forest, and there the magic takes place at the end, and the entire entire conflict resolves and plays end happily. The romantic love, pastoral love, is finally wins over all the obstacles that we see in his comedies as a general thing. So when we see his tragedies, these tragedies highlight the individual passion and the judgment they make, and finally the social structure that destroy the harmony of life. This is one of the common observations made on his tragedies. We have great tragedies like Romeo and Juliet, Othello, Macbeth, Hamlet, King Lear. Say, for example, Macbeth. You see, there it's a tragedy because the individual passion, a quality of ambition in Macbeth, and also Lady Macbeth, which led to an error judgment. That is, they considered murdering Duncan would lead to his happy life. I mean, he can become the king of that region, but it doesn't happen, so it leads to the tragedy. The social structure finally destroyed. Even we see that in Julius Caesar, that has a different kind of approach in history play. That's not like this. Anyhow, so we move on to next part, that is well-known history plays. English history plays. You know why history plays? That question comes to your mind. It was Shakespeare who did the experiment for the first time, bringing history into the play. Why? What happened? Because it was a time of blossoming patriotism. Queen Elizabeth's era, that fostered a kind of patriotism, spirit of national feeling spreading across the country among the people. Therefore, to suit to the taste of patriotism, Shakespeare grasped that breath, or rather I can say the pulse of the people, and he brought in the histories, and he staged them in the form of plays. The plays like Henry VI Part 1, Henry VI Part 2, Henry V, and Henry VI. Henry VI Part 1, Part 2, and we have Part 3 also. Henry VIII. It was while staging Henry VIII in 1613, the Globe was burnt. So we see the Globe Theatre was burnt, right? So again King John, Richard II, Richard III. These are famous history plays of him. They deal with the figures and events in the history of England, and they uphold the political order and harmony of that time of the rule. Then there are Roman history plays like Antony and Cleopatra, Coriolanus, or even Julius Caesar, Titus Andronicus. These are all Roman history plays. They are based on Rome, right? The story of Rome. These are also called as tragedies because they deal with actually Roman history, but less with the Roman history, right? But more with human nature, the human passions, as we already saw in the last slide. So his well-known problem plays are all is well that ends well, measure for measure, trials and cressida. These are some of the problem plays. The structure of these plays or the mood of these plays are tragic, but unlike romantic comedies of love or even other romantic comedies of love and playfulness, they deal with the ordinary life rather than the romantic love. So romantic comedies deal with romantic love, but here these plays deal with ordinary life. That's one more thing. And the happy ending is achieved by some accidental happening in these plays also. Therefore, these are problem plays. They are not tragedies. Though they have the mode of tragic, but they are not tragedies for this matter. Then let's come to the poetic sections. Shakespeare, sonnets and poetry. He was a super poet also. His poetic genius was actually evident in initially practiced, or rather it was exuberant through his poetic lines used in the poem also. It was verse drama, he used verse form, right? So in through his works, like blank work for example in iambic pentameter, 5 ಫೂಟ್ನ ಒಂದು ಪೆಂಟಮೀಟರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ರೈಟ್ ಫೀಟ್ನ ಒಂದು ಪೆಂಟಮೀಟರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಳಸುವಂಥದ್ದನ್ನು ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಸೊ ಹಿಸ್ poems are Venus and Adonis, the Rape of Lucile, or the Phoenix and Turtle. These are some of the famous lyric poems of Shakespeare. And we also have sonnets, 154 sonnets on various themes. 154 sonnets. We see 154 sonnets of Shakespeare have their unique quality of his experiments with theme as well as structure. When come to the idea of form and structure, they followed a particular rhyme scheme that was unique to Shakespeare. Shakespeare used AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG rhyme scheme, which means the first two lines end with AB, the next two lines follow the same rhyme scheme as AB, right? So then the next quatrain, 3 quatrains there, 4-line stanza is a quatrain. So, and one couplet at the end that gives actually a message. So 4 quatrain and couplet, the couplet ending with GG rhyme scheme, that similar rhyme scheme. And these are form of the form of Shakespeare's plays, totally different from that of Petrarchan, octave and sestet format. And when come to the sequences, there are 2 dominant sequences of his sonnets. WH sequence, also known as Fair Youth sequence. Sonnet number 1 to 126 is known as Fair Youth sequence. And there is another one, Dark Lady sequence. Sonnet number 127 to 152 are known as Dark Lady sequence. Recurring themes are there in these sonnets. They are love, lust, distrust, friendship, time, sexuality, social status, universal themes. Here also he stands universal by giving immortal messages. Yes. So therefore he is universal Shakespeare. There are reasons for his universal quality also. The main reasons, as the experts or the literary critics identifies, there are 3 main reasons generally we can see in his case. The first one is the unending human interest in his works. The concept of humanity, individuality, which was the offshoot of revival of classical learning or Renaissance, was practiced in his works. His works are for all ages because they deal with human beings. They don't tell us about some particular queen or king only. Rather, they also speak something about a person's feeling and his ills and evils, his strengths and achievements. That kind of thing, right? That is why unending human interest is the first reason. Second reason is the spread of English imperialism, which imposed English education and culture in different parts of the world. You see, during the era of Victorian, for example, Victorian era, there was a concept called the sun never sets for England. ಅಂದರೆ ಸೂರ್ಯ ಮುಳುಗದ ನಾಡು ಅನ್ನುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ಅರ್ಥವನ್ನು ಇಂಗ್ಲೆಂಡ್ ಪಡೆದುಕೊಂಡಿತ್ತು. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ಅವರ ಸಾಮ್ರಾಜ್ಯ ಎಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಇತ್ತು, It was there in Japan, or in the East and in the West. So across the globe, there was the English Empire. Therefore, along with that imperialism, they brought their education system. For example, in India, Macaulay introduced English education system. And when English education system was introduced, with that they brought the texts, the writings of the English literature, and Shakespeare was also introduced as part of that. Therefore, the spread of Shakespeare happened. But we observe one thing: without that, what we say, a stuff in a good quality in the text, he would not have survived. He survived across the globe because of the universal message he carried in the text. And the last important reason is the resistance to imperialism reinterpreted Shakespeare differently. Shakespeare is reinterpreted, redefined so many times or so many types through the ages. People looked at him in different way. One example is post-colonial theory that looks at Shakespeare in one way. You see the way the Tempest is seen there. Prospero Prospero training Caliban is seen in a different angle there with the emergence of post-colonial theories. So this can clearly tell you that these very interpretations, these very post-imperial interpretations of Shakespeare enhanced or rather spread Shakespeare further. But it's true, dear friends, that no stone is thrown at a bare tree, isn't it? So stone is thrown at a tree full of fruits that has full of things. So definitely that is the reason why people looked at Shakespeare. The interpretations were made, but each interpretation brought a new angle to Shakespeare and it made him universal, and he continues to be there across the globe as a greatest writers of English, a genius playwright. Anyhow, then finally, let's conclude that Shakespeare influenced various forms of arts, including all genre of literature and film. His influence doesn't limit to just literature. His influence is seen across the genres, right? For example, even film studies, so many film versions, adaptations are produced on William Shakespeare. So, and being a leading literary figure of Renaissance and Reformation, his plays uphold individual struggle against the oddities in life. This you can observe in almost all the plays of Shakespeare, how an individual struggle against the oddities, the differences that he faced in his in life, of oddities of life. Then again, as a master craftsman, he changed the form and structure of English drama and theatre. You see, so many things are adopted from the other parts. So many things are experimented from his own self, right? By that he enriched the very English drama and English theatre. That's what another important thing. Finally, more than anything, he contributed to the changes in English literature and language itself by intermixing the colloquial and learned usages. If you go back to etymology of words you come across, you see at least out of 10 words, you see at least 2 words that are from Shakespeare's usage. I mean, it may be exaggeration for me to say that, but still in the colloquial language, everyday language, so many words are rooted from them. See, for example, we say somebody is brute, right? So that brute is from Julius Caesar's friend Brutus. When Caesar is stabbed first by Brutus, he says, "Ew, too brute." Brute, right? That makes the creation of the word brute. That is no other alternative to say that, no alternative word to say what is cruelty, because it is Brutus, a close friend of Julius Caesar, who stabbed him and murdered at first, right? That's the thing. Anyhow, thank you for watching.